you with this evening's edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. This is going to be our February 18th, 2026 edition of this ongoing conversation that we don't want to end. And hopefully you don't want it to end either. So if you know the instructions here, I'm going to wait 1 minute before everyone, so people can get in and follow the broadcast. And then also, I always ask if you like what we're doing here, go ahead and subscribe. And that is important because you want those numbers to keep building. And I am certainly looking for baseball fans, people who really enjoy baseball, want to learn some more about baseball and can appreciate these kind of conversations. All right, I certainly would appreciate your support in that area. And my name is Phil Dixon, and I had to correct myself the other day because um, this year started my 46th year as a baseball historian. For some reason, I kept saying 42, but no, I passed 42, and I started thinking about it. I said, wait a minute, that was 1980. So it's more than 42. It's going, this started year 46. And so what were you doing 46 years ago? You got to think about this. 46 years ago, I was like 23 years old, and I decided that I need to start talking about the Negro Baseball Leagues, and started going around. And one of the first things I did was I made uh, the Negro League panoramic. That you ever seen the one with the Hilldale on one side, the Kansas City Monarchs on the other side, and the league officials in the middle? Well, I went out and reproduced that one. And believe it or not, I sold those for $3 a copy. And that was the beginning of making Negro League Baseball interesting. And so many people picked that up. A lot of athletes had it. They put in their homes, and announcers. I remember talking to Kevin Harlan. You ever heard of Kevin Harlan? Kevin Harlan had just come to Kansas City. He had done, actually, the first broadcast he did as a professional was Satchel Paige's funeral. And so anyway, I talked to Kevin, and he liked that picture. And so, believe it or not, he still has one in his house from 1980. And so, guys, these are things that I've done through the years that probably people don't know I did, but just know that I've been a force in moving this history forward. Sometimes a silent force, but certainly an ongoing force that has moved the needle on this history. So anyway, I appreciate you joining, guys. If you want to participate in the conversation, I don't know if I've set it up yet, but I may have set it up where you have to be a subscriber to participate. But by all means, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you like what I'm doing. Now, if you don't like what I'm doing, guys, I'm sure there's somewhere else you can go and have a better time. But if you like baseball, this is a good place to be, all right? And if you really want to learn more about the Negro Leagues, or how about just being a black person in America, I can handle all of that, all right? So I'll give you baseball facts, but I can also give you an experience of growing up in African American community from the, actually, believe it or not, guys, from the time maybe I was probably about seventh or eighth grade. I'll say about the sixth grade. The only white person I really knew was the postman. And because he would come, the postman comes every day. You're a kid, you see the postman. I did not have any daily interaction with any white people. And so it was through that experience that I began to realize that we had a lot in our communities, and we certainly had sports. And I realized that these guys weren't getting the recognition they should have gotten. And so I decided to start working on it. And so, man, that was 46 years ago. All right. So anyway, I'm going to jump right in. Just have a few facts tonight, and I'm going to elaborate on them just a little bit. I do want to tell you that we're going to start in 1928. So we're going to go to February 18th, 1928, the New York Renaissance. And I'm going to answer some of your questions in a moment here. The New York Renaissance team suffered a rare loss at a basketball game in the Catskill area there in New York when the local basketball team held Clarence Fast Jenkins. Now, he's one of the all-time greats, a guard, to 3 points. Can you imagine that? They held Fast Jenkins to 3 points. And then the referee jumped in the game, right? And he tagged the Harlem team with 16 fouls. So anyway, 16 fouls. Fat Jenkins scores 3 points, and they lose up in the Catskill area there in New York. Now, one time I went to New York, and I decided I didn't want to take the route that takes you through Albany, down through New Jersey, and through Albany. So I went the other direction, and ended up in the Catskill mountain air region there. So I know exactly where that was, but that was all New York Rens territory there. So, man, one way to lose a basketball game, and I've seen this happen through the years, is through the referees or the umpires. And I've seen it in boxing. As a matter of fact, Buster Kleiss, who used to be the famous boxing coach here in Kansas City, and they operated professional boxers here, amateur boxers, won the Golden Gloves many times. But he used to have a saying, he used to teach his boxers going back to the 1930s. He said, if you want to guarantee a win, you got to knock your guy out, because if it's close, you probably won't get the win. So he said, the guarantee you got to win, you got to knock that guy out. And so that was the same approach that many of these African American teams used when they were playing white teams. They had to knock you out. And because if it was a close game, it came down to maybe the umpire could make a decision, and there were lots of hometown boosters on these umpires. And hey, they could call a strike a ball. They could mess you up. So you had to actually blow these teams out and guarantee the victory. And it was the same way with basketball, boxing, and of course baseball. So anyway, just going to mention Fat Jenkins. We talk about Fat Jenkins a lot. I think I'm going to push this year for him to get into the New York State Baseball Hall of Fame. I think I need to do that. I do know some people there because I spoke in Gloversville last year, made great connections, and so I know who to talk to. I'm going to see what we can do to help Fat Jenkins along with his legacy. All right. So guys, if you're here, let me see if I can answer. Someone say, "Hey man, let's see, keep doing what you do. You'll make it one day, champ." Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. And then, have you heard of Bugle Field? Sure, heard of Bugle Field up in Baltimore. And so I said, I appreciate you, Mr. Dixon. Okay, I thank that. Yeah, one thing about it, guys, since, I've been doing this history for 46 years, if you mention something, it's a good chance that I can tell you something about it. Of course, the Baltimore Black Sox played in Bugle Field. I think, I know the elites played in Bugle Field for sure. But I don't know if the Baltimore Black Sox played many games in Bugle Field. I'll have to check on that. So, but yeah, definitely know where Bugle Field is. And almost every place you go, there are some unique fields. And I don't know how much you follow fields, but for me, it's a part of the history. So if I was to say Shirley Park, would you know where that is? That's going to be Chicago. That's where the Chicago American Giants played. Or how about Association Park? That's where the Kansas City Monarchs started off. Of course, Muehlebach Field is where they end up playing later on. And when that field was converted to a major league field, when the Kansas City Athletics came and eventually Kansas City Royals, first game I ever went to see was on that same turf there. So, but yeah, almost every place that you go has some unique field. Borchard Park. I don't know if you knew that one up in Milwaukee. Of course, some of the how about this Auburn Park? You ever heard of Auburn Park? Yeah, that's where the Leland Giants played. How about that? So anyway, so I went to San Truce this weekend in Puerto Rico, where Clemente played. Yep, great baseball town. I knew several people. I interviewed several people who played for San Truce. One of them was Bob Thurman. Bob Thurman passed away in Wichita, Kansas. Knew Bob very well. Bob gave me some really good history and shared some wonderful pictures with me. Some of those pictures I've never released to the public. So, and I don't know if they've ever been seen. So yeah, Bob Thurman. It talked about him when he was there. He was part of the what they called the Panic Squad, and that was Willard Brown, Clemente, Bob Thurman, Buster Claxton was part of it. I don't know if George Crow was at all, but yeah, the Panic Squad. That's what it was called down there. They had a lot of home runs, and when they came to play, it was definitely going to be a panic down there. Okay, so anyway, that was my first one for February 18th, 1928. Let's go to the next one. February 18, 1937. I introduced the term the other night, and I didn't know if many people had ever heard this term called a boot black. And a boot black was basically, for the most part, a shoeshine boy, not a shoeshine man. And this was a job that many baseball players, because they did not have year-round employment, they'd have to, get the best job they could if they came home for the winter. That's if they didn't get a chance to play winter league baseball, which the best ones did. But I remember talking to Jimmy Crutchfield years ago, and he used to come back home and he would shine shoes in the local barbershop. In 1938, we had a chance to go down to Puerto Rico. Yeah, he jumped at that chance. But anyway, I was going through some newspapers and I ran into this. This was February 18, 1937. There was a guy named Lloyd Marshall, and he was up around Arlington, Nebraska. And so he went down to Texas to visit some of his family. And so he was down there and, just taking in the town. And, in most of these areas, he's down in the downtown area. And so he runs into a local bootblack. And he starts looking at this guy. And he said, man, that looks just like the guy that had played up in the Arlington tournament there at the Washington County Fair. Now, remember, that's Nebraska. He's down in Texas. So he kept looking at this guy. So he finally went and asked the guy. He said, were you up in Nebraska this past summer? And this guy who was shining shoes down in Fort Worth, Texas, said, yep, that was me. And see, because that's the kind of thing they would have to do once the baseball season was over. You had to keep busy. You had to keep making money, right? Some guys even got into trouble trying to hustle money. And there was a lot of gambling going on. I can tell you some wild stories that I heard over the years, how guys survived. I remember several players around Kansas City, Buck O'Neill and those guys, they would go down and work at the post office. And then when spring training came, hey, they needed people for that Christmas rush. And that was over. February, you're ready to go play ball. So guys did what they had to do, and all the way to shining shoes just to play this game of baseball. And that's what black players had to do. Now, I don't know what all the white players had to do, but I can tell you in my community, this was not uncommon, and players told me so. All right. So that was a guy named Lloyd Marshall, ran into a guy in Texas that he recognized from the Arlington tournament, right? And that was a famous tournament up there, 1931. I know the Monarchs took a team up there, and they had Willie Foster, and the Gilchrist Union Giants used to go through there with Cristobal Torriente and those guys. And Sid Pollock had a team up there, the whatever they call the Cuban House of David. Interesting. I'm gonna just this little sideline just to give you some information. 1931, the Cuban House of David. Now, they weren't a member of the House of David. They didn't really have a legal, they couldn't use the name legally, we'll just say that. So Sid Pollock was parading team, and they went up to Council Bluffs, Iowa, and they're playing in that area. And of course, the real House of David was sponsored by Ray L. Doan out of Muscatine, Iowa. So he ended up suing Sid Pollock and made him drop that House of David name. And so Pollock ended up coming back next year, I think, with the Cuban Red Sox or something like that. But he had to drop the name because he was sued by Ray L. Doan in Council Bluffs, Iowa. And I've gone there to speak before, so I know that area right outside of Omaha, Nebraska. They're kind of like, the river separates them, that kind of thing. So interesting area up in that part of the country. So anyway, let me go to another fact here. We give you February 18th. And Branch Rickey, he is speaking at Wilberforce University. I don't know if you know much about Wilberforce, but there's a guy named Saul White. He was a student there at Wilberforce way back. And Wilberforce is one of the oldest HBCUs in the nation. Of course, Buster Clarkston also was there as well. So anyway, but Branch Rickey is there on February the 18th, 1948, and he said that Major League Baseball owners approved a statement in 1946 stating Negroes in professional baseball jeopardize the investment of the owners. And so he said this is what the owners agreed on. They couldn't agree on bringing a player in, but they could agree that it's going to jeopardize the investment of the owners. They're thinking about money. They were not thinking about fair play. And he added that 35 to 40 men attended the Chicago meeting and stated also that in this report, but he said the report was destroyed. And so no one ever saw it. But Branch Rickey is speaking and telling the truth on these guys who were the owners of Major League Baseball. And of course, when he decided to integrate baseball and bring Jackie Robinson through his minor league system, he faced lots of opposition. All right, so that was Branch Rickey speaking at Wilberforce University up, and that's up in Xenia, Ohio. Yeah, so I don't know if you know. Do you know about Wilberforce? Anybody know about Wilberforce University? And can you name a famous player from the Negro Leagues besides those two guys that I named? I'm thinking of one person specifically, and he was a all-around player of football, baseball, track, basketball. Well, you probably won't be able to guess it, so I'm just going to tell you it's Wu Fang Ward. All right. So anyway, the last one I'm going to give you today, February 18th, 1962, my favorite player, Richard Anthony Allen, Dick Allen, not Richie Allen. He hated that. He hated that name. He said he could call me Dick Allen, don't call me Richie. And had a chance to talk with him and ask him that very question. Why did you start calling yourself Dick instead of Richie? And he said, because my mother never called me Richie. That's what he told me. And that was Dick Allen, he wasn't one of my favorite, he was my favorite player of all time growing up. And I lived in right underneath the Royals, and I would go to the games and carry ball players' luggage to the car. I could really get close to them as a kid. And I'd just ride the bus over and go to the game. And I knew most of the 69 Royals very well, 69, 70, knew them very well. But Dick Allen was always my favorite player. And so anyway, February 18, 1962, he married Barbara Moore. And so he got married on this day. So, and the reason I like to talk about the ball players' marriages, because typically you don't hear very much about these African-American baseball players' families. Now, if you find my book, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History, and you'll probably have to pick it up on the used bookstore rack now because it's it's not currently being published. But you'll notice in there, one of the things I focused on was making sure that ball players' families were featured, ball players' wives were featured. And that tip came to me from Clara Bell, Papa Bell's wife. She wanted to know why the women weren't featured. And I said, we can fix that real quick. And I did. And of all the books you've seen through the years, no one featured more wives than I did back in 1992. And you got to think about it, guys. This is 92. Yeah, you got 92, 2002, 2012, 2020, 22. We're talking about 30-something years ago, and no one has featured more wives than I did. So why is that? Because people don't care about the black family. They care about the athlete. And so, but the athlete, many of them wouldn't be who they were without their wives. So anyway, guys, that kind of does it for me tonight. And I do want to thank everybody for joining me. And there's ways you can follow me. Of course, you can go to my webpage, nlbalive.com. And that stands for Negro League Baseball Alive, nlbalive.com. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Negro League Man. Of course, on Facebook, you can find me at Negro League Author, Phil S. Dixon. And I'm just out there. And I'm all over the place, guys. I'm all on you. And then you can always go to you can Google me and see all kinds of information from when I've traveled and the places I've been. And I don't think there is a historian alive in baseball that has been more places than Phil Dixon. And I just, over the past 42 years, guys, I've done just, I've done well over thousands of personal appearances. So anyway, I'm going to close it off for tonight, guys. If you like this kind of broadcast, you like this information, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll keep the conversation going. This is a place you can come, and you'll get more than what you get out of the book. And remember my old famous saying, and I didn't make this up, but I love repeating it because it's so beautiful and it's kind of comical. Toby Harrah. Toby Harrah, and I know some of you guys, you just roll your sleeves up. And I watch these people, they give these Negro League statistics, and they're half baked. They don't know what they're talking about. A lot of them, guys. And feel free, feel free. I hope I'm not offending you if you're one of those people who go in and get the statistics out of the book and think that's the whole story. But anyway, I always like what Toby Harrah said. Said Toby Harrah said, bikini statistics are like a lady wearing a bikini. Shows a lot, but it doesn't show everything, guys. That's why these stories with the numbers are so important. All right. Thank you, guys. You have a nice day. This is Phil Dixon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. This has been the February 18, 2026 edition, and I will be back again soon, and we'll keep this conversation going for as long as you want it. Thank you, guys. Have a nice evening. Bye.